I did in October 2017.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to wait a few minutes until people come in the webinar and join us live. Just a few more minutes until we have others coming in or logging in our Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us this evening. Okay. Welcome again. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Carla, from the Executive Director from Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation, AIR. A big thank you to Communities Concerned for Immigrants and Refugees for sponsoring this event. The co-sponsors for this event is CCIR, Case Moda, the Kansas-Missouri Dream Alliance, and AIR. I just wanted to announce that we will have a Q&A at the end of this webinar. If you have your questions, please post them on the comment section on our Facebook live event, as well as the Zoom chat here if you are attending in the webinar. We will only be answering DACA related questions. If you have a question specific to your case, we will provide contact information for the attorney present today, as well as leaders from the Kansas-Missouri Dream Alliance. We will go ahead and get started, and I will kick it to you, Anna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna, and I am with the Kansas-Missouri Dream Alliance. We are a organization here in Kansas City, immigrant youth, that has done a lot of work on DACA. So that's what I will be talking about today. And so I'll get started on how DACA got started. So the program DACA got started it was announced by Obama on June 15th, 2012. and it was implemented August of that year. And what it does, it protects undocumented youth from deportation. And there's a few requirements for people that could apply for DACA. One of them is that you had to have resided in the U.S. since June of 2007. You also had to be in school, no criminal record, be under the age of 21 as of June 15, 2012, and be a model citizen or whatever people want to put labels on. But let's not forget that DACA wasn't just given to us. There was a lot of work by organizations and immigrant youth that led to this. There was a lot of actions that went on in different parts of the country and pressure that was put on the administration for this to happen. It was an executive action, so it wasn't quite, it didn't pass through Congress, which is part of the issues that we will be talking about later. But that's how that began. And what it did is it allowed undocumented youth to have the ability to work and go to school. So it provided us with a 2-year permit. The cost of the application is $495 now. That was increased. It used to be a little less when it started, not a whole lot. And I can't remember the exact amount before, but so you pay that permit, the amount of that fee every 2 years. You're able to get a Social Security card, a work permit, and then you can get a driver's license. And so that allowed many of us to continue our education, be able to work, and live a life that was a little more fulfilling and a little less fear, but it wasn't a permanent fix. So if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we'll continue on with the journey of DACA. So once Donald Trump came into office, we knew that he was going to try to get rid of this program because of his continuous attacks on immigrants. And we knew right away that DACA was going to be one of his main targets. So that's what he did. So on September 5th, 2017, the then Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced that DACA was being rescinded. So what that meant is that they were trying to roll out the program so that nobody, let the permits expire so that nobody else could apply, and everyone that benefited from this program, which it was about over 800,000 people that applied, would no longer have protection from deportation, and we will go back to the shadows, no ability to be able to work or go to school or any of that. So how they try to roll that out is that within the next 6 months, the deadline was March 5th, 2018. If you had a permit that was expiring between the time that it was announced to March, you could still apply as long as you did so by October 5th. And I have my date there wrong. But you could still do it. After that timeline, you could no longer apply. And so that left, it was a very short window with no other notice. And that left a lot of us very stressed out. You had this life, people started purchasing houses, you start getting cars, you're in the middle of obtaining a degree. You have a life. Most of us that are benefits of DACA, we've been here all of our lives, most of our lives. And, you're given a little bit of that freedom to be able to live some sort of a normal life, like many of our peers, our friends, be able to drive, be able to, get a job. And so what this meant is that it was going to be taken away from us within a period of 6 months. So it was very harsh, very cruel. And it brought a lot of conversation. It brought immigration in Daca to, a national conversation. And so if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. Um, but as you know, we never, we're resilient. That's what we're thought and to be since, our young age. So what we did is this effort was led by United We Dream, the national leader organization in immigrant youth. We organized and we, multiple chapters all over the country. We started putting pressure on local Congress people because this was just not the right thing to do. And we wanted to fight for a fix. And we knew that DACA was a great program that benefited not only us, but it benefits our communities. Us being able to drive and work, we are paying taxes, we are going to school, becoming members of society, and really giving back. So what we did, it was an effort that it was the Dream Act campaign in 2017, and I think it went on to 2018. KS Moda was part of that, and so we went to Washington D.C. and we did several actions there. You can see some of the pictures there. It was about 2,500 immigrant youth from all over the country that were continuously going to Washington, D.C. for several months. We started in October and it went on all the way to, I believe, January or February of 2018. As you remember, that's when the shutdowns were happening, the government shutdowns, because we kept fighting and immigration was, at the top of that issue. And that is because we kept putting pressure. We went into the Heart Center building and we did an auction there and we screamed and demanded that they listen to us and that they take us serious and that we're not, we're not to be played because as you remember, they were trying to use DACA as an avenue to add more money to ICE and other harmful things that we were not willing to accept. So we kept fighting and fighting. And so, we didn't get a pathway to citizenship, but we did, show them that we're here to stay and that we're not going to be played with, and we're going to fight until the very end to get what we believe is right. So that's what happened with DACA. And if you want to go into the next slide. So yeah, that's how DACA got started. If you have any questions about that, feel free to just drop them in the chat and we'll be answering those questions. But yeah, it's been a very up and down journey. It's been an emotional ride. It's been one where we also learned to fight and to organize and to be able to not be, hold our Congress people accountable. Let them know that we are not going to be, we're not going to be, their tokens, and we're not going to let them use us to harm our parents and to give money to ICE or Homeland Security or build a wall. We know what we bring to our communities and to our society. And so we're willing to take this to wherever we can to protect ourselves, but also to protect the rest of our community, being TPS holders or undocumented folks that didn't get DACA before, or our parents that do not have the ability to obtain a driver's license. So that's what we've learned, and we are still here fighting, and will not stop until we see a way to citizenship, and until ICE gets abolished and our kids get released from detention centers, and we'll just continue our fight.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing that awesome, valuable information, and I applaud your leadership always. I do want to mention at this time that you have an opportunity to win, the viewers, 2 $60 gift cards. If you text your name, your email address with the code word raffle, that way we know where it's coming from, to 913-229-6183. Again, 913-229-6183. This information, your email address, your name, will only be used for raffle purposes and to send resources following up our webinar. So please text your name, your email address, and code word raffle to 913-229-6183. Opportunity to win 2 $60 gift cards. We won't be doing the raffle live today, but we will be doing it tomorrow, not live. The winners will be contacted by end of day tomorrow. So please enter. The next presenter is Raymond. Raymond, if you would like, he's going to share the current state of DACA. And if you could please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Carla and Air and CCIR. My name is Raymond Rico. I am an immigration attorney here locally in the Kansas City area. I am a member of the Kansas-Missouri Dream Alliance, and it's an honor to be here. I look forward to answering your questions. Feel free to ask those. And I have a few slides, and so I'm going to try to go pretty quick. But if there's anything you want me to rehash, I will be happy to do so. If you can go to the next slide, the Supreme Court decision on June 18th, 2020. There's a few pictures there. The KS Moda crew were there for the actions that took place outside of the courtroom when the hearing happened. And we knew late in the decision-making on the calendar, is around mid to late June is when they start releasing the final decisions. And so every day that passed, people were looking on their computers, refreshing the Supreme Court webpage to see if there was going to be a decision made about DACA. I was on pins and needles, and I am not personally impacted by DACA. But as Anna says, there's so many with DACA that everyday life would be impacted if the decision did not go the way that it ended up going. The life that having DACA status was able to make life a little bit more normal, all of that was at risk on June 18th, 2020. So if you can go to the next slide, there was a big sigh of relief that there was a 5-4 decision that upheld DACA. That really, it was the Chief Justice, John Roberts, that sided with the 4 liberal justices to uphold DACA. So there's a lot of legalese, legal terminology in that decision. And so I'm going to boil it down to about 3 big points that basically was the decision that the Supreme Court rendered. The first was that, again, on September 5th, 2017, the Trump administration aimed to end DACA, and then Attorney General Jeff Sessions basically just made the announcement: DACA is not legal. It's not a legal program. It's unconstitutional, and therefore let's end it. but you have to do so in a way that follows the Administrative Procedures Act. And you cannot do it in an arbitrary and capricious way. And the Supreme Court ruled that that's exactly what happened. They did not consider a lot of different things. They just wanted to end the program and then try to figure out a way to justify it afterwards. But you have to look at ways that maybe you can cut a part of a program, but not the whole thing. And in this case, you have to consider the reliance. How have DACA recipients relied on this decision? How might they be harmed? And is there any way to not harm someone while doing something that is valid under the Administrative Procedures Act? And also that the government did not look at how the United States would be impacted by rescinding DACA. For instance, many DACA recipients are on the front lines fighting the COVID-19 crisis. Healthcare workers, many are essential workers going to work every day to do everything from putting food on our tables to looking for cures for COVID-19. And so there's a lot of essential workers who have DACA that would be impacted. The third thing that the Supreme Court didn't do is that it did not rule as to whether DACA was constitutional or not. It says we don't have to make a decision on that. We just know that the process that was attempted did not comply with the Constitution, did not comply with the Administrative Procedures Act. And so it kind of provided a roadmap, because in saying what they did wrong, if you can correct that and try to end DACA a way that complies with the APA, that is not arbitrary and capricious, that actually has reasoning behind why the government would want to end DACA, the Supreme Court basically says there is a way to constitutionally end DACA, just that this attempt by the Trump administration did not do so. And so the next slide, please. And so this might lead one to believe that DACA wins. And so there was a big celebration on June 18th, 2020, thinking that this means what the government started to do. The government started to say, we're not going to accept new applications. The government stopped allowing advanced parole, which was the ability to travel outside of the United States to either study, work, or visit family outside the United States. And so we thought that since from those 2 dates, September 5th, 2017, when the government wanted to end DACA, until June 18th of 2020, there were over 100,000 possible DACA youth that had turned 15 years of age, which is when one can at the first time apply for DACA status. And so what that means is that there were many freshmen in high school in 2017 that were nearing graduation from high school by 2020 that never had DACA, that are going to be graduating high school, looking to go to college or looking to work, that wouldn't have the ability to do so with a work permit. Many scholarships only accept those with DACA. And so the hope would be that 100,000 new persons would be able to apply for DACA, and that people would be able to apply to leave the United States under advanced parole. But if you go to the next slide, here we have a picture of Chad Wolf, and he's the reason why we can't have nice things. About a month and a half after the Supreme Court ruling on June 18th, 2020, on July 28th, 2020, acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf, he issued a memo that he says, I've considered the Supreme Court decision, and I believe that, that we need to look at this a different way. And so instead of complying with what the Supreme Court decided, he came up with a memo. And so if you can go to the next slide, please. And so basically, in defiance of the Supreme Court ruling, what Wolf basically says is that you say we have to go back to the 2012 DACA regulations. And that's exactly what the Supreme Court decision said. what he actually did was something completely different, which creates a constitutional crisis. If the federal government is not complying with the Supreme Court ruling, then we have a tug of war, and that's not how our government, how our Constitution aims to work. And so this July 28th memo said, you know, we are not going to accept new applicants. We are going to continue rejecting new applicants. And in fact, the government did reject any new applicants when people were saying, hey, the Supreme Court ruled in our favor, accept my application. The government said no. The Supreme Court decision should allow for advanced parole to request to leave the United States. The memo says, no, we're not going to allow travel outside of the United States, and impose something completely new, that DACA renewals would be only valid for 1 year instead of 2. So you have basically a doubling of the cost of DACA, because, you know, instead of paying $495 for a 2-year permit, you have to pay $495 every single year in order to renew your DACA. Another provision that was included in the memo is that they would only accept applications that are entered within the last 150 days of the validity of the work permit. So the last 150 days of DACA status is when you could reapply. However, the government, in my experience, has been taking, in many instances, longer than 150 days to make a decision to process an application. And so that has created a big issue where my clients and many DACA recipients across the country are saying, if I apply on that day, 150 days before my work permit expires, and it takes longer than 150 days, I can lose my job, I can lose my ability to drive. And so that's what has been happening, unfortunately, across the United States since that memo. And so we've had a big issue. And if you go to the next slide, please. One of the biggest issues that was brought up is that Chad Wolf is not for real. He's not for real, the acting DHS secretary. What that means is that when the previous DHS secretary, Kristen Nielsen, when she stepped down, the way the government is supposed to work is that the deputy DHS secretary is supposed to be acting DHS secretary until someone new is confirmed by the United States Senate. Chad Wolf, he was not the next person up. He was basically installed as acting DHS secretary by the Trump administration and was never confirmed. And therefore, if he's not the next person up, is he validly in that chair as DHS secretary? And the court ruled, no, he's not. And so it was a district court in New York that says, because the memo was issued without legal authority, that the July 28th memo is not valid. So if you go to the next slide, please. So basically for Chad Wolf, they decided quite a few different things. They said that basically the Department of Homeland Security, they did not follow the Supreme Court ruling. They said that Chad Wolf is not validly the DHS secretary, that the memo is not valid, and also the Supreme Court affirmed a class. And so a class just means a group of people in a class action lawsuit. Who's included in that class is anybody who currently has DACA or would be eligible for DACA under the 2012 rules for DACA. And so currently, if you have DACA, you are a class, you are part of this lawsuit that is moving forward in the courts in New York, because it's a US district court, it's a federal court, so it very well could impact the entire country. Did we have a question or okay. And so you would think DACA wins. DACA wins at the Supreme Court on June 18th, and that DACA wins in the district courts out of New York in early November. And so it kind of goes to show you that the law is on the side that says DACA is legal, it is constitutional. Deferred action, which is the first two letters of DACA, is something that has been around and can be extended to protect groups of individuals from deportation. And again, as Ana said, DACA is here because immigrant youth fought for it. And so when we fight legally, when we fight in the streets, undocumented youth have created power and have won victories for the undocumented community. And so that's, if you go to the next slide, that's some of the victories that have happened within the last month. After that decision, the same judge, he called a conference call with the understanding that the federal government was not mandated to do anything based on the November 14th ruling, but that's why he asked the two sides to come together to try to brief what exactly the federal government needs to do. Those briefs were due on December 1st, which was 2 days ago. Those briefs have been submitted. There is a brilliant attorney named Karen Tumlin. She worked at the National Immigration Law Center and has been probably the #1 most involved attorney, along with Maldef, fighting these cases in Texas and in New York. And so I used to work alongside Karen in Washington, D.C. And so I reached out to her and she told me just a little bit about what was in the briefs. And the briefs really included personal stories of immigrant youth who are waiting for DACA to be reinstated, who are hoping to be able to travel outside of the United States under advanced parole to visit with family members that may be up in age, that may be sick, or that you just haven't seen for many, many years. And another thing is that there are approximately 66,000 DACA recipients that have received work permits that are only valid for 1 year. And so based on what happens out of the court in New York, the court could rule that if you received a 1-year work permit, that the government has to fix that, has to correct that error in issuing this 1-year work permit by reissuing work permits that are valid for 2 years. And for those who had their initial applications rejected and who filed them because of the Supreme Court ruling, the government can fix that and say, if you filed your application with us and we rejected it by not following the Supreme Court ruling, then they have to remedy that by accepting the new applications. And so that's what we're waiting for from the court out of New York. If we go to the next slide, please. And so what is the future of DACA? And so we have presented to us a new administration. And of course, with new administrations come new possibilities. Next slide, please. I pulled these statements from the Biden administration transition website. And from their website, they are declaring what their intentions are, that they will remove the uncertainty by reinstating the DACA program. They want to go a few steps extra to ensure that DACA recipients are eligible for federal student aid, which DACA students never were eligible under the 2012 regulations. And if there's going to be free community college implemented across the country, the Biden administration wants to include DACA recipients to be able to receive free community college without debt. And these pledges on their website, they want to implement on day 1 of the new Biden administration. Next slide, please. And so what does this mean for all of these lawsuits that we just discussed? So remember that these lawsuits were brought by Trump administration lawyers trying to say we can end DACA because it's not legal. And so when you have a new administration that says, hey, we were part of the administration that helped implement the original DACA regulations, that we're not going to attempt to end it, and we are not going to have the Biden administration lawyers fight to end DACA. And so it could render the Supreme Court decision, it could render what's happening in New York, it's called moot, M-O-O-T, which basically means it has no bearing in reality anymore, because the lawsuits could end, the lawsuits could be dropped. And so that's what we're hoping to see on day one of the Biden administration. Next slide, please. A few additional things. Biden plans to work to produce legislation that will include provisions for legalization for 11 million undocumented immigrants to provide a path to citizenship. In the past, these provisions have included a separate and expedited path for undocumented students that qualify for the DREAM Act in order to have an expedited path to residency and citizenship. And big news was who the Biden administration was going to nominate to be the Department of Homeland Security secretary. And so it will be, if he gets confirmed, Alejandro Mayorkas. Many people don't know too much about some of these folks that have spent lots of time working in the bureaucracy of the federal government. Just a few things about Alejandro Mayorkas. When Penn had to come to paper to draft what would be the new regulations for the DACA program in 2012, it was probably more than anybody Alejandro Mayorkas that wrote what ended up becoming the DACA regulations. He also worked in producing what was then the prosecutorial discretion memos that tried to say we are only going to use enforcement for high-level, high-priority individuals, terrorists or threats to our national security. And therefore, he said we're not going to use resources to deport young people such as those who qualify for the DREAM Act. Next slide, please. So it seems like we have some good news on the horizon, either through a court decision or through the new Biden administration. But I have to at least put in here a word of caution. So what happened back on September 5th of 2017? Remember, that is the date that Jeff Sessions said, we are going to end DACA. The reason they did that announcement is because the state of Texas and about 20 other states threatened a lawsuit because they wanted DACA to be ended on day one. And so it was getting later into the year of 2017, and a lot of there was a lot of pressure to say from many who wanted to end DACA for the Trump administration to do so. And so it was the threat of the lawsuit and then an actual lawsuit that was brought by Texas and 22 other states that really pushed the Trump administration to make the September 5th, 2017 announcement to end DACA. So the lawsuit that was in Texas is challenging whether DACA is constitutional or not. And again, the Supreme Court ruling on June 18th of this year did not make a determination as to whether DACA is constitutional. So this lawsuit in Texas was paused. And the reason it was paused is because the Trump administration was attempting to end DACA. And so why do you need a lawsuit if DACA is no longer implemented? And so this case was paused until that other case made its way all the way through to the Supreme Court. And because, of course, those who brought this lawsuit didn't like the result of the Supreme Court decision, they're bringing back up their lawsuit, trying to challenge whether DACA is constitutional. And so this case is back on. The picture here is of Judge Hannon. Many may not remember his name, but he is the judge that made a decision as to whether DAPA, the Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Legal Permanent Residents, and the DACA plus, the expanded DACA from 2014, I believe, he's the judge that blocked the implementation of DAPA and DACA plus. And so he's on the record as showing that he is not a friend to DACA. He is not a friend to to pro-immigrant policies. And so there's going to be a hearing on December 22nd. I don't know, I think most don't know whether there's going to actually be a ruling on December 22nd, but circle that date and we'll be sure to put out the word if there's any threat to DACA moving forward. Next slide, please. But what should we be doing in the meantime? There are many who have never previously applied for DACA, but who want to, but now can't because they're not accepting new applications as of this moment. Or those that have turned 15 since September 5th of 2017. What should one do? I would say to at least gather the evidence necessary in order to be able to apply and be eligible for DACA. One of the biggest, heaviest lifts is going to be having to show that you've been in the United States since June 15th of 2007. That is now 13 years of evidence, and the government would likely want to see evidence from every single year that somebody has been here since June 15th of 2007. There was a question about, do we think eligibility requirements will change? It's very difficult to say. I don't know exactly whether the Biden administration will add things or make it or change that date to another closer date. They very well could, but it's sort of a wait and see. There's not really been any indication that they're going to change the criteria from June of 2012. Advanced parole. If the courts don't do it, I fully believe the Biden administration will, either by executive order, probably by executive order, announce that advanced parole is back on. And again, those who want to travel outside of the United States to study, to work, or to visit family, or talk to an attorney, because those aren't that's not the all-encompassing reasons why one might be able to apply to depart the United States with advanced permission to re-enter. So maybe we can get creative and talk about different ways that somebody can request permission to leave the United States and come back in. And so the next headline, not the next slide, but the next headline, the DACA renewals that are only valid for 1 year. What do you do if you received a DACA work permit that's only valid for 1 year? And I put both categories because I wanted to include those that were rejected. So either if your application has been rejected or only valid for 1 year, you're a member of the class action lawsuit. And so if the court rules that the Trump administration currently needs to accept new applications, there could be a decision made here in the next few days based on that court out of New York. If not, then we're looking at the next date, which would be January 20th, 2021, when the Biden administration takes office. And they said day one that they would sign an executive order addressing DACA. So there's a lot of news yet to come. So we're right in the middle of movement and exciting times for DACA. Next slide, please. But we have to make sure that we hold the Biden administration to their word. At this point, I don't have any indication that they're not going to do what they say they're going to do. It's still on their website. But there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from past efforts to try to make sure that when somebody says we're going to do something, that they do so, and that it's not delayed. Just as delayed is just as denied. That we're not looking just for DACA reinstatement. That's not the end goal. To go back to where we were is good, but it's not where we're thinking that's the victory. That is the end goal. It is certainly not. And as Anna said earlier, don't bargain granting citizenship to DACA recipients for a laundry list of anti-immigrant measures, or by building the wall, or by stopping the legalization process for siblings or for parents of those who have legal status here. I believe the future is in our hands. We can make it what we want to be. The chances are not going to be 50-50, in my personal opinion, that we're going to see a lasting immigration reform, but the chances are zero if we don't work together, if we don't push for for what we want to see with Daca and with the undocumented 11 million population in our country, pursuing the American dream and doing work that benefits us all. With that, I'll go ahead and pause or turn it back over to Ana to talk a little bit about the work at KS Moda.
Yes, so I mentioned earlier, and Raymond did too, that we are part of an amazing group here locally, the Kansas Missouri Dream Alliance. So now that I've shared a little bit of myself and what some of the work is that we've been doing, I'll tell you more about KS Moda. So as I mentioned, we are a organization here in Kansas and Missouri in the metro area of immigrant youth that has been fighting for over 10 years now, since the Dream Act campaign first started back in 2010 or before, around that time. Our mission is just to, fight for equal rights for immigrant youth that do not have a legal status. We want to pursue education. We want to, be able to work and do all the things that everybody else has the opportunity to do. But we're also fighting not just for ourselves, but also, like Raymond has been saying, for our parents, the rest of our community. That's what we are doing now. And so part of our work has been lately focused on Daca, because it's been one of the biggest roller coasters, as you have learned, of just in the legal system and everywhere, that we keep going, having ups and downs. So what we've been doing is we've been conducting Daca clinics. I believe that we are the only organization in the metro area that has been doing Daca clinics. And so what that means is that we usually have a pro bono attorney, Raymond a lot of the times, and we also have other attorneys in the community that we trust, that provide us their time. And we assist people renew their DACAs free of charge. We don't charge a fee at all. We ensure that everything is filled out correctly. Right now with the pandemic, we're doing it through Zoom safely. We also have, we raise funds to be able to provide DACA scholarships for those that are not able to pay the fee of $495. You can see a picture of our team members there. We also, because of what we've discussed, this journey for a lot of people in our community, especially with the Trump administration, has been up and down. And so one of the things that we provide is we have a licensed therapist that is able to assist with services for those that are struggling with their mental health. We believe that that is a serious issue. So if you go on to the next slide, we're able to help with some of the costs for that. Here is how you can find us. You can email us. Here's my email address, ana@ksmoda.org. There's Raymond's email address, media@ksmoda.org. If you need help renewing your DACA, you can email us at daca@ksmoda.org. There's our website. Follow us on all of our social medias. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We try to keep them updated. We share resources for the community. We also post when we are having our next DACA clinic. You can follow us there for more information. If you want to donate and join our efforts, you can also go to our website to do that. And if you just need someone to talk to or need advice on how to navigate the education system, just reach out to us. We've all been through this process, and we're happy to share resources and our own personal experiences on how to navigate those resources or even scholarship information. We're here to help you all. So just don't hesitate to call or to email us or reach out to us via social media.
Thank you. There was a question. If we can go back to that slide again with our contact information, there was a question on the Facebook Live of how can one get involved helping with case MODA. So Anna, is contacting through the various platforms and emails the best way?
Yeah. So we're constantly on our social media pages. You can email me. My email's there. We're happy to, set up a Zoom call. We can talk. Usually we'll hang out and, mostly we are friends. But as we have, as Raymond mentioned earlier, this process has been one that has been, a lot for a lot of us. But we've also learned from past experiences that this is probably not going to be the end. There's going to be a lot more fights, and we would love anyone to join our efforts. The real work really starts in January when Biden takes office. That's when we really need to push and hold them accountable for what they've said and for what they've promised. So again, this is not the end of it. If you want to join us, just reach out to us with any of our social media platforms and we'll contact you and we'll set up a time to chat with you.
I'll just add that just prior to the ruling on Daca in the Supreme Court in June of this year, it was absolutely palpable to see the fear and anxiety and the possible trauma that was possibly going to be set upon the undocumented population. What happens if they get rid of DACA? Are ICE agents going to come knock on my door the next day? ICE has my information in their database. Many were questioning, why did I apply for this? Why I should have just never have done it. And so there are a lot of things that issues that can be addressed that is not even a part of the legal system. It's mental trauma. It's getting therapy. It's getting resources to those who feel like I don't have access. I'm not eligible to receive any benefits. And so I've been practicing for about 10 years now, and I've never seen any trauma, any anxiety to that level just before. So again, it was a huge sigh of relief when the DACA decision took place, but that doesn't stop the trauma. There's even PTSD, just thinking even now, who knows what's going to happen moving forward. And so any assistance on that end for anybody listening, there's going to be a lot of work today, yesterday, and tomorrow on that forefront.
Yes. So again, if you right now with COVID and not being able to, chat with friends and family, if you need support, mental health, reach out to us. We might be able to assist you to get you with a therapist that is bilingual. She speaks English and Spanish, and we are able to, we might be able to help you cover some of that cost too. So, from my own personal experience, I remember every time there was a tweet by Trump, like I would just freeze because I didn't know what that would mean for me. Via tweet, my life could have changed, and I would have to, stop my job. I work for a nonprofit organization. I go to school, and it was just the most terrible experience to have lived for the past 4 years because it never stopped. So again, things are looking up a little bit now, but like Raymond said, the work doesn't stop now. And this is what KSMOA does best. We fight and we hold politicians accountable. So this is our time, and we're ready to welcome anyone that wants to join our fight. And, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, we were present during the Dream Act campaign, and we were able to be there because of your donations. So, know that all the money that is donated to us go to our DACA scholarships, and for us to keep fighting for what we believe is right. So that's how we got to DC multiple times. And so, just join our efforts and learn more about us.
Thank you. There are 2 more questions I have for Raymond and Anna, but before that, for Raymond, this was a kind of a question, and this is, I don't know if you'd be able to answer it, but earlier in the slide, you said that you kind of looked at the Biden administration's transition website, and it said that they weren't ensure that DACA recipients will have access to federal student loans. Do you know if executive orders have the power to grant DACA recipients the ability to obtain federal student loans, or will they need to jump through other congressional hoops for that?
Yes, a very good question. And so just first and foremost, right now, there is not anything in order for those with DACA to be able to apply for and receive federal financial aid, grants, or loans. And so, again, what I pulled was from the transition website. So it's there for anybody to take a look at. And those kinds of things could be implemented by executive order as soon as January 20th of 2021. We have to completely look at every word of whatever executive order is issued to see if such language is included. So it's not a guarantee. And again, we should be pushing for that. There's no reason not to. Because what DACA does provide, there's a distinction between what is DACA status and what is, lawful status and lawful presence. DACA provides lawful presence. DACA does not provide lawful status. And so that might become a distinction that we need to look at. For instance, those who have a U visa that have been a victim of either a violent act or a felony are eligible for federal financial aid. And so what we're looking for is language that says those who have DACA and have lawful presence are eligible for federal financial aid. Another thing that happened in 2012 when the program started was that the Obama administration included language that said DACA recipients are not eligible for the exchange, the healthcare exchange under the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. And so they proactively put in language that says, if you have DACA, you are not eligible for the exchanges under the Affordable Care Act. I don't know if that can be changed. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know if they will change it, but I know it can be changed by executive order. The only last thing that I would add is that many who have DACA still have a big roadblock that one with DACA in many states, so it's not federal government, in many states cannot get state licenses to be an attorney, to be an engineer, to be a doctor, to be a psychologist, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many different licensing issues that are still impacting DACA. And again, these are all different fights that I welcome because these are things that really could make a difference in one's lives and for someone to be all that they can do.
Or in-state tuition is an issue too, that a lot of DACA students are not able to receive.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anna, I have a question for you. What are the most common questions that you get regularly in your work with Case Moda that weren't already possibly throughout this webinar that you think?
I think because there are so many things that have happened within the last 4 years with DACA, it's really hard to keep track. So a lot of people are not sure if, initial applications are able to happen, if advanced parole, if you can go to school, but know that I think we addressed a lot of those issues here. But if you have any questions that you're not sure about, when either if it's, about work, if, someone did something to you at work that you don't think it's legal, or I'm not an attorney or anything like that, but we can provide resources, or how to navigate the education system, or anything of that sort, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you or provide you with resources or another organization here locally that can help you with that.
Thank you. And Raymond, what about you as an immigration attorney and DACA related? What are the most common questions that you get? I bet you get lots of them.
I was already receiving a lot of questions regarding if DACA is ended, what is next for me in my situation. And so I'm really glad we're no longer in that environment. It doesn't look like we're going to be in that environment, with that one exception as to we need to make sure that the December 22nd decision, if it's a bad one, that it gets appealed, and ultimately that DACA is able to be prolonged until there is congressional action that would provide a solution path to residency and legalization. So yeah, I get a lot of questions about what state level benefits, what am I eligible for? Can I get in-state tuition? Recently, it's that issue of my work permit is about to expire. What happens with my job? And it's very difficult because without a valid work permit, companies do not have to maintain employment of all their employees. And so hopefully all of these issues are going to see brighter days ahead. But I would honestly tell you that probably the main issue to be addressed is not a legal one. It's what's going to happen with my life and mental trauma. That's probably number one right now in the undocumented community.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I can say you can count AIR as one of your allies in this work, in this fight. Yeah, that's all I can say for that. If you have any other questions, feel free to email Case Moda on the contact information that they have in the previous slide. It was anna@casemoda.org or daca@casemoda.org for all of your questions. I thank you, Anna, for joining. Thank you. I appreciate your leadership. You're awesome. Raymond, thank you so much for giving us your time today. And thank you to Andrea with CCIR for giving us this platform tonight so we can get the information out to our community. Thank you all.
Thank you.